is having the financial freedom to retire. Buy that RV, go see the national parks. Republicans and the Democrats agree every worker deserves to retire with dignity and financial security. Most Americans build retirement savings through employer-sponsored defined contribution plans like 401ks, programs and plans that work for employees and employers. Congress improved the defined contribution system through Secure 2.0, which the Help Committee unanimously supported last Congress. As a result, we're seeing record increased savings rates among Americans. In addition, President Trump and Secretary Chavez DeRemer are advancing pro-worker policies, expanding alternative assets, promoting a more diversified and secure retirement, and working with the financial advisors. Americans now have access to new investment opportunities to grow retirement wealth. But there's more to do. We should build upon our success to further ensure financial security upon retirement. This is a top priority of this committee. Secure 2.0 auto-enrollment provisions help bring many workers into the retirement system. However, we know that sometimes workers are not able to begin saving immediately. This auto-enrollment provision encourages workers periodically to revisit their financial system so they can begin saving. We build upon that which we know works. Second, empower young workers to save for their future. Workers that begin saving from a young age build strong habits and benefit from additional years of saving and compounding interest. With just a simple fix, Congress can help more Americans start saving when they enter the workforce by enabling companies to allow 18-year-olds to participate in retirement plans. Third, Congress should help workers access consistent, secure retirement income by improving access to lifetime income products, which allow workers to own and tailor their accounts to what works best for them, rather than having a one-size-fits-all. I've worked with Senator Kaine on multiple bills as regards to all this, including the Helping Young Americans Save for Retirement Act and the Auto Enroll Act of 2025. I thank Senator Kaine for his leadership and collaboration. Earlier this year, the committee and the Senate unanimously passed Senator Hassan and mine Employee Ownership Act and Senator Marshall and Senator Kaine's Retire Through Ownership Act. I hope House colleagues will act quickly to send them to President Trump. These pro-worker, pro-family policies support a more productive workforce and stronger economy. Thank you to our witnesses for being here. I look forward to this discussion. With that, I recognize Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing on an extremely important subject. It is no big secret that we have a retirement crisis in our country that demands immediate action. In America today, unbelievably, the richest country in the world, almost half of older workers have no retirement savings at all and no idea as to how they will retire with any shred of dignity or security. As frightening as the retirement crisis is for older workers, it is even a bigger concern for the millions of seniors who are no longer able to work, who have exhausted all of their savings and who have no pensions. Incredibly and unacceptably, and I learned about this a couple of years ago when I was chair of the committee, really is remarkable. Some 21% of seniors in this country are trying to survive on $15,000 a year or less. I don't know how anybody survives on $15,000, let alone a senior, but that is the reality. Half of our nation's older people are trying to make it on an income of less than $30,000 a year. According to the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, here in the United States, with more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had, we now have the dubious distinction of not only having one of the highest rates of childhood poverty in the industrialized world, we also have one of the highest rates of senior poverty compared to other wealthy nations. Today in America, nearly 23% of seniors are living in poverty, comparing that to Denmark, 5%, France, 5.8%, Germany, 12.6%. In the United States of America, 23% of seniors are living in poverty. And that is really a disgrace. These are the people who have helped build this economy. They've raised their families. They fought in wars. We should not have almost a quarter of our seniors living in poverty. 50 years ago, Mr. Chairman, it was not uncommon for corporations to provide workers with a defined benefit pension plan that guaranteed, underlined, guaranteed a monthly income in retirement. Didn't matter if the stock market went up, down, you knew what you were getting. Back then, many corporations made a promise to their workers. If they worked at the same company for a certain number of years, they'd be rewarded with a monthly check that would enable them to live comfortably in retirement. And I'll never forget, a couple of years ago, we had a young woman here, worker in an automobile factory with the UAW, talking about how her grandfather, who also worked at an auto factory, was able to enjoy a pension, defined benefit pension, that she herself could not get. Sadly, the days of defined benefit pensions are mostly behind us as a result of a relentless 50-year war on the working class of this country waged by corporate America. Traditional pension plans have become an endangered species on their way to extinction. In 1975, 44% of workers, 44% had a traditional defined benefit pension plan. Today, that figure is at 9%. In other words, we are moving in exactly the wrong direction in terms of retirement security. So what do? How do we improve that dismal situation? In my view, we should not be talking about cutting Social Security, as some of my Republican colleagues are doing. We should be talking about expanding Social Security. We should also be making Social Security solvent for our kids and future generations. Legislation that I've introduced, the Social Security Expansion Act, with 10 of my colleagues in the Senate, accomplishes both of these goals. How does it do it? It ain't difficult to figure out. Right now in America, a billionaire pays the same amount of money into the Social Security Trust Fund as somebody who makes $176,000. Somebody's making $50 million, somebody's making $176,000, same amount going into the Social Security Trust Fund. My legislation applies the Social Security payroll tax to income over $250,000 a year. Under this bill, 91% of households would not see their taxes go up by 1 penny. Let's be clear, expanding Social Security is only part of the solution. That's an important part. If we do what my legislation proposes, you would increase the solvency of Social Security for 75 years and increase benefits for people on Social Security. What we've also got to do, obviously, is bring back defined benefit pension plans, and that's a whole other issue unto itself. But to me, it really is outrageous that people can work for a company their entire lives, be given a wristwatch at best, and sent on their way. We've got to do a lot better than that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's begin with introducing our witnesses. We're joined, I'll introduce you as each of you is called upon to testify. First, Mr. James Copeland, Senior Fellow and Director of Legal Policy at Manhattan Institute. Mr. Copeland brings a strong background in regulatory policy, capital markets, and corporate governance. He has been featured in the Harvard Business Review, Wall Street Journal, and the National Law Journal, and is a frequent contributor to numerous business programs. He received a BA in economics from the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill and an MBA in JD from Yale. I look forward to hearing from you today, sir. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member Sanders, fellow senators. I really appreciate this opportunity to testify before the committee. As the chairman said, my name is James R. Copeland, and since 2003, I've been affiliated with the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research, a nonprofit public policy think tank in New York City, where I've long been a senior fellow and directed the Institute's legal policy research. Although my comments do draw upon such research conducted for my employer, I want to emphasize my statement before the committee today is solely my own. The subject of today's hearing, the future of retirement, could not be more pressing. The United States faces a twin retirement challenge. Our Social Security system is on an inexorable path toward paying reduced benefits within the next decade or so. absent substantial tax increases that would have a host of deleterious consequences over our macroeconomy. And secondly, a large percentage of American workers have insufficient private savings to withstand those looming Social Security cuts. Compounding those twin challenges, pension plans governed under the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA, have often been steered away from the strict fiduciary duty that they owe their beneficiaries to manage their assets solely in the interests of the participants and beneficiaries. Even though other interests beyond maximizing financial benefits and minimizing costs, including environmental, social, and governance, or ESG goals that are collateral to actual risk and return analysis, should not and under the law may not be considered by ERISA plan fiduciaries. In the waning days of the first Trump administration, the Department of Labor promulgated rules that largely comported with the language of ERISA and the governing judicial opinions. The department's rule specified appropriately, ERISA requires plan fiduciaries to select investments and investment courses of action based solely on financial considerations relevant to the risk-adjusted economic value of a particular investment or investment course of action. Plan assets may not be enlisted in pursuit of other social or environmental objectives, and ERISA plan fiduciaries may not invest in ESG vehicles when they understand an underlying investment strategy of the vehicle is to subordinate return or increase risk for the purpose of non-pecuniary objectives. Unfortunately, after the change of administration following the 2020 presidential election, the Department of Labor reversed course. Under the Biden administration, the department jettisoned the just promulgated standard and instead countenanced and perhaps even encouraged pension investments oriented toward ESG concerns that go beyond the exclusive purpose permitted in the ERISA statutory mandate. With limited exceptions, which do not constitute the strategies employed in the overwhelming majority of current ESG investing, subordinating ordinary financial standards to ESG concerns will lead to reduced returns, either through a lack of diversification or increased costs. Manhattan Institute research and other scholarship has found an inverse relationship between social issue shareholder activism and firm value. The last thing America's fragile retirement system needs is to exacerbate our retirement shortfalls by diverting pension assets away from financially optimal investment strategies in pursuit of environmental and social policy objectives. Although ERISA is relatively clear on its face about pension managers' duties to invest solely in beneficiaries' interests, and the Supreme Court has emphasized that those interests must be financial rather than non-pecuniary, too often goals unrelated to plans' solvency and returns have crept into plan management, often at the executive branch's behest. I encourage members of the committee to ask questions on either the focus of my written testimony or the broader array of issues surrounding this important topic. I will endeavor to answer to the best of my ability. I'm also more than willing to follow up later with senators and staff. Thank you again for your time and your invitation.
Thank you, sir. Next, we're joined by Chad Williams, a financial advisor at Edward Jones in Virginia. Mr. Williams' testimony will speak to his experience helping clients build wealth, and he can speak about the strategies that best help workers enjoy secure retirements. In August of this year, Forbes recognized him as one of the leading wealth advisors in the state of Virginia. He holds a BA and MA in political science from St. Louis University, and also an MS from the College of Financial Planning and an MBA from Maryville University. Mr. Williams, I'm thinking you're Catholic, but I don't know why I have that in my mind, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, we're looking forward to hearing from you today, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Cassidy, Ranking Member Sanders, my home state Senator Kane, and members of the committee, good morning. Thank you for inviting me to testify on the critically important issues surrounding retirement security that are being considered today. My name is Chad Williams, and I've been an Edward Jones financial advisor in Ashburn, Virginia for the past 13 years. I would like to emphasize at the outset our strong support for the Auto Re-enroll Act and the Helping Young Americans Save for Retirement Act, both introduced by Chairman Cassidy and Senator Kane. Edward Jones offers a wide variety of products and services that are designed to help individual investors, small and mid-sized business owners, achieve retirement security for themselves and their employees. Our 20,000 financial advisors serve more than 6.7 million households in America. Edward Jones has clients in every county in the United States. As an Edward Jones financial advisor, I meet every day with Americans who want to do the right thing financially, but often don't know where to begin. These conversations make it clear how financial education, combined with public policy, can change behaviors and help achieve financial outcomes. Although congressional efforts to encourage personal retirement savings have benefited millions of Americans, much more can and should be done to enhance retirement security. In that context, we strongly support two bills introduced by Chairman Cassidy and Senator Kane. First, I would like to address the automatic re-enrollment legislation. In 2023, the Plan Sponsor Council of America found that automatic enrollment can increase participation rates by at least 15 percentage points based on plan size. Under automatic re-enrollment, an employee who opts out of the plan initially is again automatically re-enrolled in the plan periodically, for example, every 3 years. This would apply the power of automatic enrollment to far more employees and help increase plan participation, while preserving the ability of employees to opt out again. Accordingly, we support the Auto Re-enroll Act. I also want to address the bill moving employees' eligibility age from 21 to 18. Saving at an early age can make a significant difference. First, retirement savings have more years to grow so that even a small amount set aside at age 18 can grow into a significant part of a retirement nest egg. Second, helping younger individuals get into the habit of saving, investing in their future, can help establish a habit of saving that will serve those employees well throughout their lifetimes. Because of this, we strongly support the Helping Young Americans Save for Retirement Act. Most business owners I work with currently do not allow for participation earlier than 21, and none have adopted automatic re-enrollment. These bills would change things for the better for many of these clients without additional burden on them. My wife and I are raising 2 young sons while also caring for my parents who live with us. I have incredible respect for the hard work of my parents and their dedication to providing for us. But like many in their generation, they began saving later in life. Their experiences and the experiences of many Americans that I work with are part of what fuels my commitment to helping others avoid these same obstacles. That's why I strongly support these bills to help more Americans build financial security earlier in life. I would also like to express Edward Jones' support for bills introduced by Senator Collins and Senator Warner in a prior Congress that would expand retirement savings opportunity for family caregivers. These family heroes give up many retirement savings opportunities, and they need our help. We look forward to the reintroduction of these bills that will help millions of caregivers save for a dignified retirement. In closing, I would like to again thank Chairman Cassidy, Ranking Member Sanders, my home Senator Kane, and the rest of the committee on behalf of myself and Edward Jones for holding this important hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and I defer to Senator Sanders to introduce his witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to introduce Richard Fiesta, Executive Director of the Alliance for Retired Americans. Mr. Fiesta is also a member of the National Academy of Social Insurance and serves on the National Board of Directors of the National Consumers League. Mr. Fiesta, thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Senator. Chairman Dr. Cassidy, Ranking Member Sanders, my name is Richard Fiesta, and I am the Executive Director of the Alliance for Retired Americans, and thank you for this invitation. The Alliance is a 4.4 million member organization that includes in its mission educating and motivating and mobilizing retirees and all Americans so that all Americans can have a predictable, secure retirement. Today's hearing on the future of retirement is very important. But it asks the question, Does retirement have a future? Is it something that all Americans can have, or is it a privilege only for wealthier Americans? There's no better time to strengthen retirement security because demographers tell us we as a nation are in the middle of peak 65. 2024 to 2027, more Americans will turn 65 than any other four-year period in our history, 11,400 each day. So why do we think secure retirement is at risk? The Census Bureau just last month released data saying that the only demographic group that moved more into poverty over the last year or so are people over 65. Senator Sanders mentioned the low income of many of our older Americans. For 60 and then now 90 years, first Medicare and now Social Security's guaranteed earned benefits have helped keep generations of seniors out of poverty, but it's not enough. Another reason for the retirement crisis is the decline of defined benefit pension plans. The shift from those to defined contribution plans over the last 40 to 50 years has placed investment risk on the workers and has proven to be an inadequate replacement for traditional pension plans. And importantly, there are structural economic reasons for our retirement security crisis. Americans cannot save what they do not earn. Since 1979, real wages of the bottom 90% of wage earners have only grown by about 15%. Real wages for the top 1% have grown 138%. The post-war model in which wages increased with productivity has been severed, leaving families with stagnant buying power and the inability to save for retirement. So what can we do? First, strengthening and expanding Social Security, such as Senator Sanders' Social Security Expansion Act, which will help the trust fund financially and increase benefits. Second, we recognize that the long-term solution is to ensure that workers earn higher wages, which leads to better retirement benefits. One of the primary factors in the decline in the number of unionized workers is also the decline in a stable retirement as well. The inability to collectively bargain for wages, health care, and retirement benefits. 64% of union workers have access to a defined benefit pension, but only 11% of non-union workers. Passing the PRO Act to fix our nation's broken labor laws will give the ability of an unencumbered right to form a union and then to wage and have better wages and benefits. Another solution is raising the minimum wage. It's been at $7.25 since 2009, the longest stagnant price in its history. Raising the Wage Act would increase the minimum wage for nearly 22 million workers. It increases earnings now, puts more money into the trust fund, and then therefore higher Social Security benefits upon retirement. Senator Sanders, you also have the Pensions for All Act that for the 56 million workers who have no workplace access to a pension, they can either, through their employers, pay into FERS or create a FERS-type retirement program. Finally, there is more than $2.1 trillion in unclaimed 401k funds sitting in tens of thousands of dormant accounts held by employers and financial institutions. The Labor Department should act quickly and decisively to get those funds in the hands of the workers who earned them, as was envisioned when Congress passed the Secure 2.0 Act. I thank you for inviting me today and look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. I will defer to Senator Collins.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Williams, you mentioned in your testimony legislation that I've introduced in the last Congress and hope to be reintroducing soon with Senator Warner, called the Catching Up Family Caregivers Act and the Improving Retirement Security for Family Caregivers Act. The first of the two bills would allow caregivers to save for retirement in a Roth IRA, even if they are not working for pay, since most caregivers are uncompensated. The second would allow caregivers to make additional retirement catch-up contributions to compensate for those years that they couldn't contribute due to leaving their jobs to take care of a loved one. Family caregivers play such an essential role, as you know. And when a loved one is no longer to care for him or herself, it often falls on an adult child to step in and take care of a parent or a disabled spouse or sometimes a child. Oftentimes, they do so because they simply can't find professional help to come into the home, or it's too expensive, or they aren't comfortable with an outsider taking care of their loved one, or the loved one may resist that. And they really don't want to place a beloved parent or spouse in a long-term care facility, which also is extremely expensive unless it is covered under Medicaid. So not only do many of these uncompensated caregivers have to leave the workforce, but they also are foregoing their contributions to Social Security, to their IRA, to their retirement plans. So they suffer economically when the time comes to retire. Could you comment further on this issue based on your own experience with serving your clients and what you think of the bills that we've introduced?
Senator Collins, I see this everywhere I go. My clients, my family, friends, neighbors, it is a critical issue and one that I personally am incredibly passionate about. In my practice, there is not a single financial plan that we draft that doesn't have some sort of caregiving component or long-term care to it. And caregiving is a profound act of love, but it often comes at a high personal cost. It is the intersection between financial security and health security. And at our firm, we partnered with AgeWave in 2025 and found that 92% of caregivers express concerns about their own retirement. It is a prevailing issue. Your bills would provide much needed security, retirement security tools for caregivers to make up not being in the workforce so that they can contribute more when they're able to. As a financial planning practitioner, I want tools like what your bills have to be able to offer to support clients of this deserving community. And for caregivers in my practice that have little to no earned income, it would allow them to be able to defer in tax-advantaged accounts, and they wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. So we welcome bipartisan efforts and discussions to advance legislation that provides tools for this important community.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really overlooked but growing segment of the population. And here they're doing the right thing. They're taking care of a beloved parent or spouse who who is definitely housebound and at times they simply cannot get the care other than from a relative. And yet the relative who leaves the workforce to care for that beloved relative is penalized later in life because they've lost out on a year or two, or maybe 3 or more, when they would have been in the workforce. It's not that they don't want to be in the workforce. And believe me, I've seen it firsthand. Caregiving is a 24-hour-a-day job. And yet this is totally uncompensated. I only have 10 seconds left. Mr. Copland, I saw you nodding. If you could very quickly make whatever point you would like to make.
Certainly. I also think your bills are good ideas, and I'm caring, we have an 85-year-old father who's, we've had to do it both ways. He's in long-term care now, but he wasn't until, less than a year ago, and it's difficult. So I applaud you for this effort.
Thank you.
Senator Sanders.
Thank you. Right now, somebody makes $100 million a year here. Somebody makes $176,000 here. They both contribute the same amount of money into the Social Security Trust Fund. If we lifted that cap, as I think most Americans want us to do, starting at $250,000, we could create a solvency for Social Security for the next 75 years and significantly increase benefits for recipients. Mr. Fiesta, does that idea make sense to you?
Yes. Your bill, others have put the Social Security Trust Fund on a better path to financial solvency. We know, for example, that Jeff Bezos only makes $80,000 a year. So he's only paying $80,000 in wages on Social Security, for example. The companies have to file SEC reports on what their executives are making. I can't see how that's fair. In addition, raising the cap will also create a better Social Security administration. Right now, when we have more people retiring than ever who need it, because everyone who works at SSA is paid out of the trust fund. It is at its lowest level of employees in 50 years, and that's even before DOGE took an axe to it earlier this year. And it's also the entry spot for Medicare as well. So raising the cap improves benefits, the trust fund, and the administration of the agency.
Mr. Williams, do you think it's okay that somebody who makes $50 million contributes the same amount to the Social Security as somebody makes $176,000?
No, Ranking Member Sanders, I'm going to stay in my lane and speak from the perspective of the families that I work with every day. But I can tell you that they depend on Social Security as a reliable foundation for any financial plan, and that they need clarity, they need predictability and confidence that the system that they pay into is going to be there in retirement.
Right. And isn't one of the ways to make sure that their kids and they will continue to have the benefits is by lifting the cap so that the wealthiest people in this country at a time of massive income and wealth inequality contribute their fair share?
As a practitioner, I welcome additional tools and discussions on how to extend the longevity of Social Security.
Mr. Williams, you sound like you should join us up there. You sound like a good politician. Mr. Copeland, you talked correctly about an aging society. Isn't one way, you got two realities. You got an aging society, but you also have massive levels of income and wealth inequality. Do you think it's okay that somebody who's makes $50 million a year contributes the same amount as somebody makes $176,000 into the Social Security Trust Fund?
Well, respectfully, Senator, they also get the same back in Social Security benefits as the other folks. I mean, the Social Security system has been conceptualized since the beginning by FDR as a policy which sort of replicates a pension type system.
But they
pay in and get back.
But they're paying the same percentage of their income, 6.2%.
Correct.
All right,
But they get back comparable benefits as well. I mean, that's the way it's.
Yeah, but if you're making $50 million, you're probably not staying up nights worrying about your Social Security benefit. Point being, at a time when so many seniors are living in poverty, trying to survive, when we have some of my Republican colleagues talking about in one way or another cutting Social Security, raising the retirement benefits, don't you think one very simple and fair solution to the Social Security crisis that you talked about is lifting the cap so that people on top stop paying their fair share into the system?
Well, I think Social Security's gotten a lot of support for not being structured as a redistributive program, and you don't even really quite put your money where your mouth is on this policy proposal, because you create this donut where you don't increase the cap for a certain amount of income, and then you start at $250,000, which is obviously politically driven, Senator. But you're not really saying lift the cap. You're basically, well, we're going to have a cap, then we're going to keep the cap, and then we're going to drop the cap.
Bottom line is we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had. You're living in an economy now where the richest people have never had it so good, and yet we have the dubious distinction of having the highest rate of senior poverty of almost any major country on earth. We've got to do something about it. And I think it's time we ask the wealthiest people in this country to start paying their fair share of taxes in general and into the Social Security Trust Fund. Thank you.
Senator Husted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate everyone coming today. Interesting conversation. I will start by in preparation for today. I looked at the Trump accounts, and I know that those are not designed for newborns, not designed for retirement. They're designed for other aspects. But if you took $1,000 and you put it into a newborn's account every year for 18 years, first 18 years of their life, and it drew 7% interest until they were 67 years old, that would be $1 million in their account. $1 million in their account. And as you might conclude, maybe from some of the conversation we've already had in here, there is perhaps a reason for people not to trust government to be the ones in charge of their retirement. As much as we all want to protect Social Security, we have $38 trillion in national debt, and seemingly no will to correct these problems in the collective world that we live in. But how important for you, let's start with you, Mr. Williams, how important is it to teach young people how money really works? And are we doing a very good job with it?
Senator Houston, I think that is a critically important question. And when I draft financial plans for clients, the difference of even 2 or 3 years can be everything. And I think the more tools as a practitioner that I have to get to young Americans earlier and encourage them to start saving is a good thing. And as a practitioner, I want my clients to be able to save earlier, which is exactly why we support the Helping Young Americans Save for Retirement Act and the Auto Re-Enroll Act. So speaking from a financial planning practitioner standpoint, I welcome additional tools that allow us to do that.
Yeah, it seems like we need to do better. I was a fan of these when we passed them, but I've become more of a fan in not just the monetary value, but in the cultural and educational value that they can have for young people, particularly young people that maybe don't come from families that have a lot of resources. I know I grew up in a family that would live pretty modestly, and I remember when I got my bank account and I would mow yards or do things and deposit a few more dollars, and I saw this interest, this interest thing that kept going up. It's something I think is an education, but also the insidious opposite of that is how inflation also eats into the value of that resource. I also have been a big fan of ESOPs, and we have legislation to try to do more employee ownership. And maybe, Mr. Williams, I don't know if you've dealt with any of your clients who've been in ESOPs. I just believe this is a great way for the people who start businesses to help their employees benefit from the success of those businesses and put them on firmer financial ground. Do you have any experience with those, and do you have any thoughts?
It's an important question. It's currently not a part of any product offering at Edward Jones, but we certainly value the employees owning ownership in a company. Edward Jones is actually a private partnership, 100% owned by the employees. And we believe that aligns well with our culture and makes our employees think differently like owners. And just to go back to your earlier point, Senator Houston, I run a variety of workplace plans across the country, one of which includes a diner. And recently, I had a young woman approach me, she's 18, and she worked at a diner. And these people often get up before dawn, and they cook breakfast for us. And she wanted to start saving. And she wasn't able to start saving because her plan didn't allow for eligibility. It was at age 21. And as a financial planning practitioner, that's really frustrating, especially when we give advice to say, we want you to start saving earlier, but we don't align policy to be able to do that. And so from a firm standpoint, we welcome conversations on expanding that.
Mr. Copeland, do you have thoughts on either of those topics?
Yes, I mean, I think from a corporate governance perspective, ESOPs are good in the sense that they align your workers' interests with your shareholders' interests, and so that can facilitate good labor management relations. And what you're talking about with young people is absolutely right. I didn't comment in my testimony on the senator's bills with Senator Kaine, but getting people started younger and giving them a nudge to try to get enrolled into these plans is common sense. It's something I always encourage my younger colleagues to do to the extent they can. So I applaud those efforts, all of them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just say I want to thank Michael Dell and his wife for what they did. I think that's I know we talk about how wealthy people, whether they contribute a lot in life. A guy that's giving $6 billion to help the poorest children in our country establish savings is a very noble deed, and I'm glad we created the foundation for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Husted. Senator Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here today, for your expertise and for your testimony. And just a comment as we all talk about caregiving. As many of my colleagues know, my husband and I have been caregivers for 37 years for our son who has disabilities. And as important as the various proposals here are to help caregivers save for retirement, not miss out on Social Security, it's also really important that we don't rely solely on family members to be home caregivers in the home. Taking care of somebody 24/7 is not good for the person needing the care, and it's not good for the caregivers either. And there's a whole group of people who are talented and creative, but they need to be able to make a family-sustaining wage as they do this kind of care. So I hope that that's something we can continue to work on together. Now, to the topic at hand, Mr. Fiesta, during his campaign, President Trump promised that he would, quote, bring the cost of everything way down. However, since the start of the Trump administration, the average U.S. family has paid $700 more for everyday items compared to what they paid in January 2025. As President Trump's reckless tariffs continue to drive up everyday costs, it's even harder for many Americans to save for retirement. So, Mr. Fiesta, how do these high costs hurt people who are trying to save for retirement and people who are already in retirement who have limited savings?
Well, excuse me, on both types of people, obviously it's been very hard. For seniors in particular, it's where they spend their money.
Yeah.
Food, fuel, healthcare.
Right.
Three elements of our economy that have had supersized inflation over the last year or so. And of course, by being retired, they don't have a steady stream of income that's going to increase over a year. I mean, their incomes are mostly fixed, for example. So that's been difficult. And then without access in the workplace to some sort of retirement savings plan for 60 million people near and even further out from retirement, you can't save. It's been very difficult because if childcare is $32,000 a year, for example, how can you spend that and the other inflationary items we've seen and then try and save for retirement? It's a squeeze.
Thank you. Another question for you. Last month, the Social Security Inspector General warned that criminals are trying to scam money and personal information from seniors by claiming that their Social Security numbers have been used in illegal activity. As ranking member of the Joint Economic Committee, I've launched an investigation into financial scams, and I'm developing legislation that would improve how the federal government works with the private sector to crack down on emerging scams and help Americans who are victimized by these scams. How could improved coordination and assistance for victims at the federal level help combat scams?
Yes, this is a growing problem, I think we all recognize, and especially now at the advent of AI, which we in our organization hear from members, both being victims and worried about becoming a victim. Clearly, the fraudsters are getting more intelligent, more complicated in their maneuvers, and anything across departments and legislation in that way is needed because it's not going to get any better.
We need, for instance, single points of contact at agencies for
Yes.
people who've been scammed. You know, the AI makes especially a lot of seniors believe that it's a loved one on the other end of the phone or using some information about the family in a text, and it's a really growing problem. The global scam criminal activity is now costing the economy $1 trillion a year. More than $1 trillion is outpacing the illicit drug trade. So it's extraordinary. Mr. Williams, one last question here. Small businesses are the backbone of the New Hampshire economy, and they need to be able to compete with larger businesses in offering competitive benefits to employees. Senator Budd and I lead the Bipartisan Retirement Investment in Small Employers Act, which would cut taxes for the smallest businesses that create retirement accounts for their employees. So, Mr. Williams, what challenges do small businesses face in offering retirement benefits, and how will reducing this burden help business owners and workers build financial security for the future?
Well, Senator Hassett, that's an important question. And when I work with businesses, they need two things. They need less complexity, and they need choice to cater to the needs of their individual business.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Senator Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Thank you. Such an important topic for so many people, and I'm always grateful for Chairman Cassidy holding these hearings. I think he's been one of the most active committee chairs this Senate, and so we're grateful to him. This committee covers everything from birth to death and everything in between. Working, education, such important topics for the American people. Florida. I'm the senator from Florida. It is undisputably the best state for retirees. In fact, we are called the Silver State proudly. And so I'm excited we have the opportunity to talk about issues affecting our retirees.
Will the stenographer retract that statement? So.
We live in obviously exciting and dynamic times. Many of our constituents who are nearing retirement are concerned with what those golden years may look like. And we've faced some factors in the more recent years I don't know that we ever thought we would see. We saw companies start prioritizing things like ESG and DEI. Many would say that they did so over common sense fiduciary responsibilities or interests. Government spending has been rampant. There's fraud in so many programs that seniors rely on, putting those programs at risk in many instances. And so I am certainly, like our president and so many here, are fully committed to protecting programs that seniors rely on, like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We're also making sure that we are looking at programs where there is fraud and seeing what we can do to crack down on that and make sure we're not giving money over to bad actors or criminals, but actually to the people we're trying to care for and protect, and give some sense of confidence in their future years and health. And certainly not a lot needs to still be done to clean up some of these issues. But I wanted to focus specifically, and I'll start with you, Mr. Copeland. In your testimony, you focused on environmental social governance policies known as ESG. This is an investment policy. I think the American people maybe didn't understand in many instances what was going on, especially with the larger investing firms. And many were nervous that these firms were putting hardworking Americans' money, sometimes retirement money, into funds that were going towards far left causes, and maybe not specifically looking at what's the best financial decision purely. In Florida, we took very decisive action against ESG. We even divested from companies that were not looking merely at financial interests or success, and looked at other things for our retirees. But I think this goes outside Florida and what we're doing to safeguard against this in the future. And so we've made great progress under President Trump in this area, protecting those retirement assets. But how do we protect American investments in the future from this type of agenda-driven investing?
Yes, I mean, it's a multi-pronged issue, and you know, ESG captures governance. Some governance rules are worthy of discussion, but most of these environmental and social rules really do compromise returns. We've done research on that. There's peer-reviewed academic research on that. And when it comes to ERISA, which is what falls under this committee, with our pensions, we really should not countenance this sort of environmental and social adventurism when it comes to funds. I mean, it's hard to draw the real rules because these factors can matter in the abstract, but in general, what we've seen with the way this ESG investing, it's not. If you're investing your own money and you want to say, I don't like tobacco, or I don't like guns and I don't want to invest in that. That's fine, but that's very different than what's happening with some of these funds where they're actually leaning in terms of shareholder engagement and trying to change corporate behavior, including these big passive index funds, including proxy advisory firms, which are broadly unregulated federally. So some of that stuff falls under Senate banking and not here, but the ERISA stuff, the pension stuff, it's vitally important, particularly for states with lots of retirees like Florida.
Thank you, sir. And mindful of my time, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Senator Moody, and now Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses. I had intended to be here on time to say a word about Mr. Williams, a Virginian, by way of introduction, but a Foreign Relations Committee delayed me. But I just want to brag on him in case you didn't, Mr. Chair, in the introduction. He runs his practice in Ashburn, Virginia. His wife, Anusha, they would do it together. I think Anusha is here with us in the audience. His testimony obviously focused very heavily on his firsthand experience dealing with clients. Just this past August, Forbes recognized him as one of the leading wealth advisors in the state of Virginia, and we're really happy to have you with us today. And thanks to the panel. There's a lot we can agree on in this space. There's a lot of bills pending before the HELP Committee that are very bipartisan that I think we can advance on. I know the chairman is very committed, as Senator Moody said, to having this committee be a committee that marks up a lot of legislation, because even though there's a pretty broad ideological breadth on this committee, we've had a history of being able to do a lot of good work. Mr. Williams, I really appreciated your story about your client who's the 18-year-old working at a diner. More 18-year-olds work full-time than most people think, and yet federal law says that when employers have 401ks or other pension plans, they must allow all over age 21 to participate if they have the plans. Millions of workers work in places that don't have the plans, but if an employer offers that plan, they're required to have that open to all over 21. Senator Cassidy and I have a bill that would say, hey, if you're a full-time worker at 18, you shouldn't be shut out of a plan. And so this early retirement bill, we call it the Helping Young Americans Save for Retirement Act, which is very bipartisan, I think would be a positive. Mr. Copeland, I appreciate you weighing in on that one as well. Let's, if we say you want to start the habit earlier, let's provide the tools to really make it powerful to start the habit earlier. The other issue that's come up, and again, it's a bill that Senator Cassidy and I have had for a couple years, deals with auto re-enrollment. Here's some statistics that even when I hear them, I continue to be surprised by them. 3 in 10 workers who have the ability to contribute to workplace plans don't. And most of these workplace plans do involve some employer match. So, but 3 in 10 who could get that match if they contribute don't. But then another survey shows that 59% of people not participating in their workplace retirement plan actually believed that they were participating. And so there's a need for more information, and more information delivered in a regular basis. In health insurance, you know, we commonly ask people to re-up every year. Okay, here's what you did last year. Here's how it might have changed. Do you want to stick with what you did? Do you want to do something different? So people get the prompt every year in health insurance. I think we should be prompting them regularly with respect to retirement. And so Senator Cassidy and I have a bill that would allow employers to do some creative things, including an auto re-enrollment. So somebody who opts not to participate, maybe they're at the start of their career and they just don't feel like they have the cash flow to support their life expenses and begin retirement savings as well. But if every few years you re-enrolled them in a plan automatically and allowed them to opt out, they can opt out, that would be a way of maybe encouraging them to take seriously this form of savings. As Senator Husted said, modest investments over a long period of time can mean tremendously successful collection of assets toward the end of your working life. And so on the auto enrollment question, I would just love you to talk a little bit more about why that would be so valuable.
So, Senator Kane, thank you. I see this issue every day, and I love, when you mentioned that people are prompted with their health benefits to reevaluate things on a yearly basis. As a financial planning practitioner, I would love that. In many plans that I've taken over, you would be shocked how many employees thought that they were enrolled and they're not. We do this with health. Employers send reminders for open enrollment because life happens, we get busy. And retirement works the same way. There is a plumbing company that I run a workplace retirement plan for. And one of the workers there wanted to take some time off saving. He had about $30,000 in credit card debt and wanted to take the time with his wife and family, cut back, and they did. And they were able to pay it all down. But at the end of that 1 year period, I called him and I said, hey, you're ready to re-enroll? And he said, yeah, I completely forgot about that. I should get back in. And I can't help but think what other Americans would do without somebody giving them a nudge or an easy on-ramp as afforded in the Auto Enroll Act. So I think it's very important.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
A lot of my questions are going to build upon what Senator Kane said. But first, Mr. Fiesta, you pointed out that there is a lot of money stranded in retirement accounts. We attempted to address that. It's a great point. And we attempted to address that in Secure 2.0, and I whispered to my staff that we need to make sure that it actually is implementable. The Biden administration rules apparently open businesses up to lawsuits. That ain't going to work. So anyway, just to say, I thank you for raising that point. Mr. Copeland, I just want to build on this. What is the power of allowing an 18-year-old to begin to save? I mean, in terms of the return on savings for retirement.
Yeah, it's really just the power of compound investing, right? I mean, when you save early, that investment grows, and then you're earning on those earnings. And it's why I always tell, my young Manhattan Institute colleagues, do it early. If you wait till you're in your 50s like me, you're going to have a hard time catching up. And we let people vote at 18. We let them join the military at 18. It seems like the right cutoff to me. And so I really think it's something that ought to get broad bipartisan support to say, if you're 18 and you're working, you can do this, particularly because a lot of these folks are folks that aren't going to college. So, this is part of that opportunity cost trade-off. And if they're going to go straight into the workforce, they ought to be able to save for retirement.
I think it's consistent with what we've been doing. Moody and Kane and Cassidy have been interested in how do you get people who don't want to go to college the training in high school by which they could begin to work upon graduation from high school. Why aren't you including them in the 401k? That's consistent with other policies that we're doing. Mr. Williams, why would someone choose not to save?
There can be a variety of reasons, including financial emergencies. Typically, they're financial shocks, but they're usually transitory in nature. They might need a new car, something breaks down, need to do a house remodel, and they aren't always an emergency. I had, for example, a couple clients that were welcoming a new baby, and they needed to get the room ready, and so they just needed a quick break to be able to get that room ready.
So the auto enrollment, the renewed auto enrollment for those who have the new baby, maybe Irish twins, so they have two new babies, but then they would be two Irish guys up here. So so then this would be tailored for them. Oh, now we got to start thinking about retirement again.
Absolutely.
Now, can you review, because there's actually academic data that shows that if you have auto enrollment, the increase in people who participate in retirement. Mr. Copeland, will you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is the sort of nudge that folks like law professor Cass Sunstein, who's worked in Democrat administrations, and economist Richard Thaler wrote about in their book. And I don't agree with every application that they elucidate, but this is sort of pretty much an obvious one, right? I mean, every year. I mean, I'm in the process now. I've got to figure out what I want to do with my FSAs. We get healthcare and re-enrollments, et cetera. If you just had this every year, there's a lot of inertia that sweeps in there.
But don't I know, like, there's like the uptick, like 49% more people will enroll. There's some study out there. Do I remember that correctly? Is that a real number, or am I imagining that?
We can get back to you on the official figures. Chair.
Yeah, but it's significant. It's a lot. Auto enroll really helps.
It's a huge uptick, and we'd have to see it work in practice. But I think it could be one of the more significant things out there in terms of defined contribution plans.
Now let me ask, because Senator Sanders has talked about the defined benefit versus the defined contribution, and there are advantages to defined benefit. One of which is the lifetime income products. What can Congress do to increase access to lifetime income products? If you will, importing the best of the DB system into the DC system, which has more flexibility.
Question for me. So Chairman, it's an important issue, and we want to acknowledge the concern behind it for expanding access to these products. And as a financial planning practitioner, I want additional tools, including lifetime income products, to be able to offer within workplace plans. But ultimately, we want to empower plan sponsors to be the deciding factor and make those choices on what they believe is best for their employees.
Okay. Mr. Fiesta, do you want to respond to that?
Yes. Again, it goes to whether or not you have enough to save, and compounding is important, but are those funds going to stay in retirement funds until retirement? In other words, we've seen people taking out retirement funds early, and you lose the compounding, you lose money at retirement.
I'll point out that sometimes after Hurricane Katrina, for example, we allow people to withdraw and then repay without penalty. So just as a state, coming from a state in Florida that supposed a good state to retire in, that, you know, you can't have natural disasters which have a negative impact. So we also have to have that flexibility. And I would suggest that in the case of something like a natural disaster, we would allow, that may be Senate Finance, but that we would allow to pull out and put back in without penalty. But anyway, Senator Hickenlooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank all of you. This is something, you know, before I ever dreamed of getting in politics, I opened a restaurant in a funky part of Denver in 1988. And there probably is no form of small business where you are closer to your employees and they become part of your family, and you deal with their joys and their sorrows in an immediate way it's almost impossible to describe unless you've been in that kind of a situation. And the one thing, we worked for several years, we created 401ks, we got bigger. The burden of it on the business, but also on the employees, they just kept dropping out. And, you know, we provided healthcare. We were tried to be the most noble of small businesses, even beyond what was economically efficient in many senses. And I guess when you recognize that we have so many people that don't have any retirement benefits at all, some of the statistics, 79% of those between 18 and 65 haven't got a good retirement plan. 80% of the people making less than $27,000 a year of any age don't have a retirement plan. You know, you're talking somewhere 55 in the neighborhood of 55 million Americans that we're all going to have to sort through and take care of in one way or another if we can't get one of these retirement plans together. And I agree completely that auto enrollment is essential, very powerful. Mr. Fiesta, I guess I'd start with you. Why is providing access to high-quality retirement plans for, you know, truly small businesses, and I would say gig workers, you know, subcontractors, small businesses like that, why is it so particularly important?
For people who change jobs frequently or are independent contractors, assuming they're not misclassified as employees and should be employees, they will have many jobs, short-term and long-term, during their lives. So if there is some locus to have access to a retirement plan that stays with them through their working life, it just makes it easier on top of Social Security to have a more secure retirement, and you're not then burdening public programs, potentially.
Right. Well, and I agree that ability, we have a plan we're working on, I think you're aware that.
Yes.
A retirement for all Americans. It allows people to take it just wherever they go, it's theirs. It follows them everywhere, and I think that's a huge part of its potential success. Mr. Williams, I want to talk just a moment. When you look at how many Americans feel that any kind of savings is a burden to them, you know, AARP reports that workers are 20 times more likely to save for retirement if their contribution is automatic. Again, our plan that we're working on is trying to make sure that that is an automatic. They can take it down to zero if they want, but we're constantly trying to push them to that automatic savings, because it's amazing what people can do if they're not paying attention sometimes. We're also trying to, you know, by making the automatic enrollment, remove barriers. What's your sense of automatic enrollment? You answered a little bit already, but flesh it out.
Excellent question, Senator Hickenlooper. I think automatic enrollment has had an amazing effect on young Americans and all Americans saving for retirement. We often see a 15 percentage point increase in participation, and re-enrollment will be a step in the right direction for increasing those retirement savings. We share your objective in making sure that everyone has a lifetime income stream of income and retirement, and we welcome tools to be able to do that.
Right. I couldn't agree more. Well, I guess I'm going to cut it off there just because I would unlock a Pandora's box with my next question, but I'll send it in writing. I also want to insert some items in the record. I asked unanimous consent to enter into the record the 3 letters that Senator Kane referred to from AARP, the United Steelworkers of America, and the Certified Financial Planners Board.
Without objection.
Great. I yield back the floor.
Senator Murray.
Pandora boxes are good. We can do that. Chairman Cassidy, thank you so much. I think this future of retirement is really an important topic, but I do think we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, because if Trump keeps driving up prices and sabotaging health care and Social Security and much more, then the future of retirement won't even exist for many Americans. I mean, how many Americans are actually going to get to retire when everything in their lives is so much more expensive? So we can't talk about retirement without talking about how President Trump is driving up those costs and the uncertainty so many seniors are seeing across the board. I don't think we can talk about retirement without talking about the healthcare crisis that is now causing premiums to skyrocket for families who rely on the ACA premium tax credits. I have spoken to seniors in my states who are not quite yet old enough for Medicare, and they are seeing their premiums jump by over $1,000 a month right now, starting in a few weeks. And that is just really unaffordable for so many families, let alone seniors on a fixed income. I talked to a woman a few days ago who had just retired. She planned all of her life to make sure she had the right thing. She's on the ACA. She was expecting the tax credits. They're gone. Now she's talking about going back to work. So much for retirement. And I think we also need to talk about the other elephant, is that Trump took an axe to the Social Security Administration this year. He cut 7,000 staffers, which makes it really hard for seniors who need help accessing the Social Security that they've earned. Instead of focusing on pushing legislation that will help seniors afford those basic necessities, food, electricity, instead of fixing the mess he caused with those SAA cuts or the chaos that is now being caused by the tariffs, Trump's top priority was to cut taxes for billionaires, not for seniors. So I think we all have to recognize that's the picture that many seniors are looking at today. Mr. Williams, let me start with you. More than 55 million Americans don't have an easy way to save for retirement at work. It just doesn't exist for them. Instead of having a portion of each paycheck automatically saved, tens of millions of Americans actually receive their paycheck, pay their bills, and then they figure out how much they can afford to save for retirement. When prices are spiking across the board today for everything from healthcare to electricity, how does that impact your clients' ability to save for retirement?
It's an important question, Senator Murray. Healthcare specifically, in every financial plan that comes out of my office, we dedicate a significant amount of time and attention to that and include it in financial plans. And we empathize with, families that are experiencing changes in the healthcare system. But as a financial planning practitioner, I will stay in my lane and avoid public policy and say that I welcome additional tools as a financial planning practitioner that helps us address this important issue.
Well, Mr. Fiesta, seniors spend their working lives paying into Social Security, and nearly 40% of seniors rely on that for a majority of their income. Yet the Trump administration is really intent on making it harder for seniors to access their hard-earned benefits. My constituents in Washington State are waiting on the phone with the Social Security Administration for hours, getting dumped off, having to call back in, still not talking, just unable to reach an actual person that can hear them and help them through this. What have you heard from your members about their experiences with the Social Security Administration over the last year?
Sadly, the same, Senator. We've heard similar stories on waiting. It used to be a year or so ago, you could go into a Social Security office if you needed a new card, prove who you were, and a new card appeared in the mail within 10 days or so. Now, if you can even get to an office, you can't do that, and they'll give you an appointment in 2-3 months for something so simple as that. The number of offices that have lost staff, these local offices which were designed to help local people, have seen some 100% of their people leave, take an early buyout, or were fired. We're also very worried about who is guarding the technology and the security systems at the Social Security Administration too, given potential breaches and the like there. So we're hearing it every day just on the retail of trying to get simple service. Again, we're at a point in our history where 11,400 people are turning 65 every day and have the lowest number of staff at Social Security in 50 years. So we're in a demographic crisis, but for individuals who need those services, which we pay for because all those workers are paid out of the Social Security Trust Fund, aren't getting them.
Well, this is what I am hearing from a lot of people in my state as well. This needs to be fixed. SSA needs more support, not less, and soon. So thank you.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the three of you for coming out and sharing your thoughts here on what we can do to be helping Americans when it comes to retirement. Yesterday, I gave some remarks on the floor of the Senate talking about how my father was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It has been extraordinarily difficult, not just to see my father in that kind of condition, but also it has been financially catastrophic for our family. Not just for me, for millions of others that are experiencing 7 million people with Alzheimer's, tens of millions of family members. The out-of-pocket costs are unbelievable and outrageous, oftentimes $12,000, $15,000 a year just for a room for my father in terms of getting care, let alone all the other challenges that we're seeing. It has now affected my ability to save, my sister's abilities to save for our own retirement. We're reducing that. It's affected my ability to save for my kids in terms of their 529s. Is having multiple generational impact. And Mr. Williams, I guess I just wanted to get a sense from you what we should be thinking on this front. Like, what do you tell your clients who are thinking about planning for long-term care costs? How does that factor in when we're thinking about their retirement security?
Senator Kim, I am so sorry to hear that your family is going through that, and I empathize with you. It's an experience that many of my clients experience on a daily basis. I encourage clients to make in their financial plan long-term care and healthcare planning a critical component of their financial plan. And I think to ignore that does a disservice to them in retirement planning. So in my practice, what I'll often do is encourage them to take advantage of any available tools that they have, which can include, but not limited to HSAs, et cetera, in saving on the side, long-term care products, and self-insuring as well. But I think the key here in overcoming the cost of that and having enough resources is to start saving early, which is exactly why we support the Helping Young Americans Save for Retirement Act and the Auto Re-Enroll Act. In many times when I create a financial plan, we'll let the investor or client make the choice on how they want to receive that care. To your earlier point, some clients prefer a nursing home, a private nursing home, or a home health aide. And that's not always an option for everybody and the people that I work with. But we want to let our clients decide and make appropriate resources available to be able to do that in an early start.
Yeah, no, look, I think we need to be thinking about how we can have that kind of conversation and try to make sure that current retirement savings advice is fully considering the costs of health care, of long-term care. But I'll be honest, like my father, the cost that he's incurring, and no amount of him saving would have prepared for this moment. And I also find that, no one necessarily thinks that they're going to be the one that comes down with these types of debilitating illnesses and problems and injuries. So that's just something I hope this committee keeps in mind as we're looking to see how we can be able to be helpful to others. Mr. Fiesta, I want to bring you in on this. I mean, long-term care insurance is often considered to be complicated, problematic, unreliable. The number of long-term care insurance providers have fallen from over 100 to now less than a dozen. Even when people try to do what's right, they hit roadblocks. Given the high costs and limited options in the shrinking market, it's clear that families cannot depend on long-term care insurance alone, and structural policy solutions are needed. What can be done to address the broader problem of planning for long-term care and saving for retirement from a policy perspective? How do we support workers, caregivers, and their families?
Well, I don't think you can save your way into paying for long-term care over time during your work life or your own funds if you're in retirement. The numbers and the inflation just do not add up. And as you mentioned, maybe 2 or 3% of the population have some sort of private long-term care insurance. But what Washington state has done is they've enacted the first statewide long-term care insurance state-run program, which nicks almost like a unemployment insurance, 0.058% of your of a wage tax that goes into a fund. If you're in it for 10 years, then you're eligible to get, and this will grow with inflation, about $36,000 in long-term care benefits. And the state of Washington had a referendum to do away with it last year, and it was rejected overwhelmingly. So other states are looking at programs like that as well. But at some point, it becomes a national problem as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I hope that we were able to find real solutions here in a bipartisan way on this committee. And with that, I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Morkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fiesta, I'm deeply concerned about the growing relationship between private equity firms and retirement plans. In Massachusetts, we saw private equity firm Cerberus Capital Management, alongside Real Estate Investment Trust, Medical Properties Trust, and Steward Healthcare, destabilize our entire healthcare system, closing hospitals, leaving a trail of preventable deaths and heartbroken families, and ultimately collapsing into bankruptcy. And what did Steward do upon declaring bankruptcy? It attempted to shed its pension obligations to union healthcare workers in Massachusetts who had worked at these hospitals for their entire lives, and rip away retirement security from thousands of families. At the same time, this administration and its corporate cronies are arguing that pension funds should invest more in the very private equity firms that they are ultimately undermining the solvency. It is absolute lunacy. So we know private equity firms value profit over everything else, leaving workers to suffer and communities to clean up the mess. And we know that the Trump administration's claims that workers are missing out on outsized profits by not investing in private equity are lies. An Oxford University study showed that private equity funds, quote, have returned about the same as public equity indices since at least 2006. It's even worse when you look at these investments after the fees. And now, because private equity's greed knows no bounds, these same firms and corporate executives want to use the 401k system as their own personal piggy bank. They want to gamble with grandma's retirement to finance their fourth yacht. Mr. Fiesta, what are the dangers of the Trump administration's attempts to open up our 401ks to retail private equity investments?
Private equity is some of the most opaque types of financial instruments out there. There are no real guidelines. You're at the mercy of the manager when you're going to get paid back from an initial investment. The average is 7 years. These all point to things that don't make sense for someone saving for retirement or in retirement who needs a steady, predictable income, for example. The expensive fees we don't really know about. As you pointed out, there are studies that show that the returns aren't as good in recent years as well, and especially for a retail investor who may not have any access to what the investments are of that private equity firm. I mean, money managers and pension managers have to hire very expensive third-party services whose job it is to find out what's in a private equity fund. And that just seems to make no sense for a individual retail investor.
So from Massachusetts to the other 49 states, I'm warning you, it's coming your way, private equity. And they are just heartless, they're ruthless when it comes to what the impact is on the hospitals, on the workers, and on the community, and on those retirement plans that the workers had depended upon. I also want to ask about the Department of Labor's retirement security rule, which we call the fiduciary rule, promulgated under the Biden administration. This is a straightforward rule that says, if you, as a financial advisor, are giving investment advice to somebody saving for retirement, that advice has to be in the best interest of the saver, not the best interest of Wall Street. So I grew up in a working class community in Malden. My father was a truck driver. And I can tell you that if a financial advisor told my family or our neighbors the best way to save for retirement, they would go ahead and assume that the financial advisor had their best interests in mind. So the Biden administration made the fiduciary rule the law of the land, but now it has landed in the Trump administration's crosshairs. Mr. Fiesta, can you talk about why the fiduciary rule is so important and explain who will be hurt if it is repealed?
Senator Markey, it's just common sense that if you go to someone to advise you on your investments, that that person has your best interest in mind, not the fee structure or commission structure as well. Especially for people who are at or near retirement, who may be rolling over a 401k or an IRA, who would have a large sum of money. This is
Member Sanders for holding today's hearing. Also want to say thank you so much to each of our witnesses for being here and for presenting today. Now, as we discuss the importance of planning for retirement and having investment options for retirement, as well as other issues that this committee should consider, I'd like to ask just a few questions, starting with Mr. Williams. Earlier this year, the administration issued an executive order that would encourage 401k managers to offer private equity options in retirement portfolios. And one of my priorities here in the Senate is creating pathways to wealth for all of our families and to grow economic opportunity, especially younger constituents who have expressed their interest in planning for the future and building that type of wealth. Investments in private equity seem to appeal to many of them as I talk to them. So I want to make sure that our next generation's investments in their future are protected. And the idea that private equity investments may bring about a higher return on investment than what we would consider in a traditional retirement investment is debatable. These investments can come with risk due to different oversight and disclosure requirements, which could increase the possibility of financial loss. So do you see a benefit in these types of investments? How would you advise our young people, especially for those who'd be looking to invest early, and as private equity potentially becomes an option that more people are interested in, as we consider the impacts and opportunity of private equity and 401k plans, I want to know, what should we as a committee and as Congress as a whole be thinking about in terms of how we best place guardrails around these kinds of investments?
Senator Alsobrooks, this is an important question, and we share your desire to create American prosperity and help younger Americans save for retirement. And as a firm, we continually explore new products and services in our workplace plans so that they are appropriate, diversified, and transparent. And we are currently exploring how we can prudently offer alternative investments to clients. But I think the guiding principle is to make sure that our clients have a safe and transparent experience and a set of investment options. With regard to individual products, my approach as a practitioner is I treat it in the same way that a patient wouldn't come to a doctor. If a patient comes to a doctor and says, I want this particular medicine, or I don't want this particular kind of medicine, if they're a good doctor, they will say, well, maybe that makes sense for you, maybe that doesn't. But I'm more concerned about how it fits within the overall context of your wellness plan. And as a financial planning practitioner, I take a very similar approach. So if a client comes to me and says, I want private equity or I want alternative investments, my job, both as a financial advisor and a CFP professional too, as well, is to make sure that we're prudently offering products and services and they can make informed choices.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, Mr. Fiesta, when we're looking at how much seniors rely on Social Security for their monthly income, the numbers paint a really challenging picture. In my state, for example, approximately 30% of our residents age 65 and older rely on Social Security for at least half of their monthly income. And when you look nationwide, we know that 73% of seniors rely on Social Security for half their income. 22 million seniors rely on it as their sole source of income. And data tells us that even with Social Security, approximately 23% of seniors in the United States are living in poverty. Now, I was proud to join Senator Blumenthal and several of my colleagues to include Senator Sanders as an original co-sponsor of the Boosting Benefits and COLAs for Seniors Act that would base Social Security benefits on the Consumer Price Index for Americans age 62 and older, which is CPIE, instead of the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners. And I was also proud to join Senator Sanders and more than 170 of my colleagues in Congress to support Raise the Wage Act. So Congress has been debating the COLA change for several years, and I wonder whether you can explain the importance of calculating Social Security benefits using CPIE rather than CPIW.
Yes, Senator, we have, at the Alliance for Retired Americans, supported changing the COLA to what retirees spend their money on: food, fuel, and especially health care, the highest inflation components of our economy, including prescription drugs. This year, for example, the Social Security COLA January 1 will be 2.8%. Had we been using at the BLS the CPIE, it would have been 3.1%. And most of the last 20 years, the CPIE would have been 0.234% higher than what the COLA was. So you can compound that over time, and seniors would then have a more realistic income to pay for their basic necessities. Thank you for co-sponsoring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now, I ask for unanimous consent to enter letters into the record in support of the Helping Young Americans Save for Retirement Act from the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, Nationwide, Transamerica, TIAA, Empower, Ever-Jones, the Insured Retirement Institute, LPL Financial, and the American Benefits Council. I ask for unanimous consent to enter letters into the record in support of the Auto Enroll Act from the AARP, Empower, Nationwide, Ever-Jones, and the Insured Retirement Institute and LPL Financial. And I ask for unanimous consent to enter letters into the record from the American Retirement Association, the Insured Retirement Institute, the Spark Institute, Financial Services Institute, the Associated Builders and Contractors, TIAA, the ESOP Association, the Stable Value Investment Association, Betterment, and ACLI pertaining to the topics discussed at this hearing. So granted. For any senator wishing to ask questions, questions for the records are due 5 p.m. Monday, January the 5th. Thank you all for being here. It was a good hearing. As my colleagues walked out, they said, important hearing, good hearing, you made it better. Thank you. The hearing committee stands adjourned.